Good morning, friends. My name is Father Dan O'Neill. I am a Carmelite residing here at the Carmelite community of St. Cecilia's in Englewood. I am so grateful to Brother Manuel for giving me the opportunity to offer this Lenten reflection. He did the same thing at Thanksgiving, and I had a chance to introduce myself then, but if you will allow me, I'm going to repeat who I am and how I fit in around here. I grew up in this parish, 1 block down the street from St. Cecilia's. I served more masses in the 1950s than I can count. I went to the Carmelite High School Seminary in Massachusetts, and I've been a proud and grateful Carmelite ever since ordination in 1969 in this very Cecilia's here in Englewood. Since that time, I've done various things with the Carmelites in various places, but I'm most proud of my life as a parish priest in the community of Carmelites. I served in St. Joseph's in Demarest. I was a pastor in St. Mary's in Closter for 6 years. I was a pastor in the now defunct St. Gelasius in Chicago in the 1990s for almost 8 years. I served in Teaneck for 11 years. And most recently, I served at Mount Carmel in Tenafly again as pastor in these last few years until retirement at the age of 75. Now I'm back home at Saints, where I always wanted to be and where I'm so happy to be. Many a Sunday, I attend the 9 o'clock Mass, and I've even been spotted a few times out there in the congregation, mostly for the obvious reason. This is how people know who I am, and it's always been my mark of distinction and pride. I say Mass in parishes when I'm needed, and I'm happy to offer this reflection today. So, Lent 2021. When one reaches a certain stage or age in life, the reality is, for those of us who are in the retirement community of St. Cecilia's, the days are actually long. They drag out, and the years, on the other hand, fly by. Suddenly it's another year, and another year, and another year. And that's where we are in this year, 2021. Once again, we are back to the great holy time of Lent. In the Church's wisdom, the Church has often repeated these words from Psalm 95, verse 8. In Lent, we repeat it time and again. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. Why do we say that at this stage of life, where many of us are on the second half? Because we know the heart hardens over time. The heart hardens over the struggles to make it, to support one's family, to care for the sick, and to worry about the injustices in our world, such as racism and hunger and crime. And then on top of all that, every person on the planet is contending with this terrible pandemic, the virus Corona-19. And so we are always struggling to keep our hearts from hardening. Thus, we have the opportunity to face up to that question, to address it, and attempt to do something about it this year on the Lenten Journey, when Lent has been anything but normal and usual. Over the years, many of us have been taught to do some act of penitence or self-discipline in Lent. Good idea, still valid, still legitimate at this moment in history. Then, as Vatican II took hold, we realized we want to do not just deny, but express our joy, our gratitude for God's blessings, and so we challenge ourselves to greater acts of love and kindness. All of those things are part of the normal reality of Lent. But here we are in the year 2021, once again asking the question, if today you hear God's voice, harden not your heart. I believe our church has great wisdom in the cycle of our faith life that we do every year for the span of 365 days. Yes, We need the heartwarming sentiments of Christmas, when if you can't be moved by a little baby, you know your heart is hardening. And I believe, yes, just as much, we need the journey of Lent at every age, whether we are in the beginning of life, in the middle of life, or in the home stretch, because the heart can be hardened at any stage of that time, and that includes this very moment. If today you hear God's voice, harden not your hearts. Is it not a fact that new recruits in religious life go to a place of novitiate, where they zero in and focus on the meaning of spiritual life and the meaning of the vows in preparation for a lifetime of living them honestly? Is it not a fact that military recruits go to boot camp? And isn't it even a fact, as some of us are appreciating, that baseball players go to spring training before they start the next season of living and sporting and making the big buck as they do? That's another example of Lent. That's what Lent is, a time to get our act together, a time to renew ourselves, a time to address something in our spiritual lives that actually needs to be conquered and challenged. You will hear in the reading tomorrow for the first Sunday of Lent that even Jesus went out into the desert for 40 days. All three of the synoptic gospels discuss this event. They describe it in different ways. Today, tomorrow in Mark, it's very brief. Jesus went out into the desert for 40 days to do battle with the demons, the forces that are dragging us down, the forces that are trying to take over our lives, to focus upon self rather than other. Jesus himself went through this experience of Lent, embraced it, didn't work his way out of it, didn't try and negotiate his way out of it. He dealt with it, he faced it, and he came out ready to undertake his mission. That's exactly what I would like to say today in Lent. Most of us have been down this road many times, and yet again, we get to ask the question, is our heart hard? Is our heart in need of repentance? Is there a need for conversion, for something or other in our lives or in our relationships? And is it not possible that the year 2021 is the year when we understand the psalmist's wisdom? If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Perhaps this is the year when you and I concede that was spoken to me directly and personally. This is the year. Please God, let it be so for you. Thank you. Have a blessed Lent.